Greetings and welcome, everyone. I am Dr. Wolf, and today I am joined by one Somber, who is a fan fiction writer of such very popular stories like Fallout Equestria, Project Horizons, and one of my personal favorite fan fictions I've ever done a dramatic reading for, Simply Rarity. That, to this day, remains one of my personal favorites. I'm glad you could be a part of this discussion today, Somber.
Thank you very much for having me.
We've been discussing for a little while about our ideas on Twilight Sparkle's character arc. I mean, ever since she became a princess, her stories have sort of slowed down a bit. There hasn't been as much development for her character over the past few years, but we have some ideas of where she could go in the future. Somber, did you want to start with your initial thoughts on what we've seen of her character arc thus far in the show?
Well, it seems like she's slowly moving to take over for Princess Celestia. She's gone from essentially being a student to being a member in a group of friends. Now she's become a princess. And the only real princessy duty that she's taken that Celestia possessed was this instruction of a mentor. So I'm wondering how far you could actually, take Twilight's arc and where ultimately it's going to end up before you really don't have a show with Twilight anymore.
Yeah. You mentioned that you believe that one day Celestia is going to be sort of replaced by Twilight. And I can agree that that seems like the logical final step to Twilight Sparkle's character arc. How long that would take is certainly up for debate, but there are a number of events that hint that that is the eventual goal for Twilight Sparkle's character. I mean, especially from Lauren Faust herself in interviews long past, she has said on a number of occasions that she had intended Twilight to one day replace Princess Celestia. And it would make a lot of sense in that respect. I mean, that is one reason why you would raise Twilight to alicorn status, even though that part wasn't part of Lauren Faust's original vision. It does help to move her towards that eventual goal. However, there was something you had mentioned last night, Somber, that does bring up a very interesting point. If Twilight Sparkle is eventually meant to replace Princess Celestia, what happens with Princess Luna? Because, like you mentioned, Somber, she's had 1,000 years on the moon and only recently was given a chance to be a part of Pony Society once again. If Celestia moves on, does Luna go with her? Or would it make more sense for her to stick around? What do you think?
She does have a very raw position. She basically was banished for 1,000 years, came back for 6, and if Celestia goes, where does that put her? Does she just simply bow aside because, she was Nightmare Moon and therefore unfit to take the throne? Does Twilight and Luna, do they both try and co-rule Equestria? Does Luna take over and Twilight, just basically, be her number 2? I'm not sure how far they could go with that. Maybe for one season where Celestia moves on and then Luna takes over and explores the implications of Equestria under Princess Luna. My fear, though, is that the show is going to elevate Twilight to a point where she essentially is not going to be able to go on the adventures with her friends that we all love. And I don't know if they're steering her that way deliberately and they're planning on phasing out her role to Starlight Glimmer, or is this just something that they're going to and it's going to jump out of left field and make a mess of things? I'm not sure.
I can see a possibility where Starlight Glimmer is sort of filling the role that Twilight has been filling for the past few years, while Twilight is becomes the ruler of Equestria in some form or fashion. I mean, we have seen in the Equestria Girls series that Sunset Shimmer kind of took on that role, at least during the last two films up to this point,
Right.
where she is sort of the unofficial head of the group. And as you've stated also in previous conversations, there is a lot of similarities between Sunset Shimmer and Starlight Glimmer. They have their own arcs that they're going through right now. Both started out as villains for many different motivations, of course, but they were able to learn the value of friendship and slowly gain the trust of others. And it's interesting to see where they could go, because at this point, I think there's a lot more potential for, say, Sunset versus Starlight, as opposed to someone like Twilight, who has already come so far. I mean, that is part of this discussion. Where does Twilight go from here? And once you reach that final step of someday taking over for Princess Celestia and possibly Princess Luna as well, I think that would make a lot of sense, that Starlight becomes a sort of head of the group after she's gained a lot more trust and loyalty from the rest of the main six, and Twilight sort of steps aside. But I don't know if you could really make a show work in the long run if Twilight is constantly set aside, because there are a lot of fans out there who would be upset over that fact that she never takes part in any kind of adventures or even the slice of life stories anymore.
Well, it's a phenomenon that you see with a lot of long-running shows like CSI, where you have a pivotal central character and the actor, wants to move on, and the show tries to continue after that character leaves, like Grissom and CSI. They managed to keep the series going, but there's just some solid debate over whether the quality of the show suffered for that swap. And I'm not sure how enduring the show is going to be once you put, Twilight Sparkle on the throne and you focus on Starlight Glimmer. She's the character that I associate most with, just as an egghead, as an intellectual, and someone who's trying to do good for others. So Starlight doesn't fill that gap that Twilight occupies. She's a redemption character. She's someone that has messed up and is trying to do better, which is a character that that appeals to me, but is a different kind of character than Twilight. And so I don't think that she can ever truly, take Twilight's role in the party dynamics.
Well, here's a thought. Let's say for a moment that Twilight does fill the position that Celestia has now. Would it make sense for the show to shift even just a bit towards a national level, like interacting with other cultures and countries outside of Equestria? Perhaps there have been some slight hints in previous episodes that, say, with the Griffins and the Dragons, that there are possible alliances that could be found in those different species, right? Let's say that there had been introduced a massive world conflict that did allow a chance for all these different races to come together as one solidarity nation and take on this new threat. Would those become interesting stories if Twilight is the ruler at the time?
They could. If you had, if you escalated the story to the point of like Equestria Knights, where Twilight has to take over the throne, and say Luna and Celestia are, I don't know, abducted, sealed away, banished by some foreign power, then you could escalate. You could escalate Twilight's, story, and this at that point. the problem that you have with that is then you are changing the characters of all the rest of her friends. If Applejack is, a knight of Equestria, what happens to the Apple family? What happens to the Apple family farm? What happens, with Pinkie Pie and Fluttershy? You're essentially taking these characters that we've been so familiar with and, shifting their focus and their where they're going to deal with this external threat. And how long can this external threat be maintained? 1 season, 2 seasons? There comes a point where eventually you're no longer MLP. You're now something else. And while I find that the possibility intriguing, I have to wonder if Hasbro would be willing to support something that is a much more serious story. I'd love to read it. I'd love to write it. I'd love to watch it. But I think that Hasbro is focused, what merchandise can we make that, people are going to buy?
Right. I could see it working if you just shift the current methods of just a bit, because we already have the cutie map sending various members of the main 6 around Equestria to fix friendship problems. Right. And in part, this has also led to characters like Pinkie Pie and Rainbow Dash helping out the Griffins, even on such a small scale. What if you just incorporate that to where the cutie map is sending certain characters to visit other races around the world with the eventual goal of building alliances, more intercommunication?
It would be a really interesting direction to take the show in.
Yeah, but not as much of a shift from what I was saying earlier if you just have the individual characters doing a lot of what they're already doing.
Right, because we've been seeing Twilight less and less active with the other characters. I don't know. I still don't like the idea of a show without Twilight Sparkle in it.
Yeah, that's going to be hard for most everyone because Twilight is a very fun character, and I want to see more of her.
It's not just that Twilight is a very fun character. We still haven't explored stories with see them shuffle off the board, without at least a Celestia episode.
Yeah.
And I think that if Twilight is going to take on responsibilities to the level that she is now going to be ruling Equestria, I'd like to see more actual, statesmanship from her. Cadence was given the Crystal Empire, and what does she know about governance? It's fortunate that, the show will never get into that level of, scrutiny, but she was a full sitter. She wasn't learning, how to run state dinners and whatnot.
Well, let's talk for a little bit about Celestia and Luna. We've mentioned several times in this conversation that we think the eventual goal for Twilight is to replace Celestia in the capacity she has now. I remember talking with you just last night about how Celestia would move on. What would be the next step for her? And we came up with the ideas, what was it? See if I can look that up quick.
I think it was the idea of her ascending rather than not dying. We don't say death in MLP, but
right.
Don't say hibernate.
And then I mentioned, we could have an episode where Celestia is ascending to whatever next form there might be for an alicorn. That on the surface, that's really what they're talking about and what the conflict is about Twilight being able to say goodbye to her longtime mentor.
Yeah.
It's the subtext of that same episode, much like with Tanks for the Memories. You could have a focus on death itself, even though they don't specifically say it. And I would be most intrigued if they could pull that off effectively, because I love seeing episodes where they are addressing more mature subjects in a way that even children can understand and relate with. I like it when the show is taking chances in that regard.
This is something that I think DHX is brave enough to do, and I think that they are eager to explore those topics. I don't know if Hasbro would back it up. So far, from what I've seen, their executive meddling seems to be just merchandise. Mm-hmm. And the show has rolled with what Hasbro wants particularly well, even if the fans occasionally don't approve. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I really would love to see that episode, and I would really hate to see that episode, because depending on who's writing it, it could come off as incredibly cheesy or just incredibly heartbreakingly wonderful.
Yes.
Because no one wants to see Celestia die, but she has been ruling Equestria for 1,000 years. There's fics like, I believe it's the Sun is Tired, where you think about, what it would be like to live just 100 years, and then just multiply that after century after century after century, the amount of history that Celestia possesses. And now she finally has the kingdom in a place where she can step aside. I kind of want her to have that relief, that retirement, that vacation. I just would hate to see it either manhandled as, oh, she now becomes super sparkly Corona aura Princess Celestia, and who's going to rule from on high. And by the way, Twilight, here's your throne.
Yeah.
That escalates her character, but it doesn't actually change the relationship between them. It just gives Celestia promotion.
I think that is a very admirable aspect of Celestia's character, the fact that she is so long-lived and still maintains this kind and gentle demeanor with most everyone she interacts with. The fact that she's lived for so many centuries and still can be so kind to those who are so much younger than her, that she's outlived so many generations of ponies, at least as far as we know. And yeah, I think that's a wonderful part of her character. And I can agree that when she does eventually move on, I'm hoping that the show will reach that point, because I'd really love to see it. I hope that when she does move on, it's basically, you don't know what she's become or where she's gone. It's left a mystery. And this is supposed to feed into the idea that the show is talking about ascension, this next step for alicorns, but the subtext really is talking about death and moving on.
Right.
They've done that so well for Tanks for the Memories, even though it was a much smaller scale. For characters that we've known since the very beginning, it would leave a much greater impact if done correctly. But then that still leaves what happens to Luna. Because would Luna ascend with Celestia? Would Luna want to be with her sister in this next step? Or is it the buildup that's been shown in previous episodes where Luna is learning to forgive herself through chatting with the main six and learning to build friendships with each of them? Would she stick around and sort of take over for Celestia and learn for herself what it means to ascend, and then maybe a season or two later do the same thing? I don't know. It's interesting possibilities there.
I think that one thing they might do with Luna, that's something that I tease with her character, is I believe that Luna is an introvert. That she does not like public affairs and occurrences, and she does not deal with them very well. And so I think that one direction they could take with Luna is Luna, instead of ruling Equestria, continues to do her work in dreams with foals, with individuals on an intimate one-on-one level, and basically becomes Twilight's advisor rather than ruling the kingdom herself.
Yeah.
Because she recognizes that Twilight, like Celestia, can interact with other people, much better than she can.
Somber, your voice is actually getting a little staticky. I'm wondering if your internet connection's having any issues.
Yeah, my internet is unfortunately horrific, but hopefully it'll stabilize.
Well, hopefully. But let's see. We've been going for probably at least 20 minutes by now, and we've covered a lot of good subjects, but is there anything else we'd want to address before we close out for today?
Well, let's see. We have one possibility that they could do with Twilight, and it intrigues me, but I'm not exactly sure how likely it would be, but it would be a disempowerment, where she's taken down a step. She's escalated and escalated to becoming a princess. What if she was given an opportunity to give up her alicornness, to say save her friends or to save Equestria? That would not be a hard thing for Twilight to do because she's very self-sacrificing. And that would allow her to drop back down to that level where she's more even with her friends.
I suppose a lot of people would start questioning, well, why make her an alicorn to begin with?
Well, because I think the season was ending, and they thought that season 3 was going to be it, and they're like, we have to finish with her an alicorn, and wait, we're getting 4 more seasons now?
Yeah, I suspect it's going to be more than 4 seasons. At this point, we're about halfway through season 6. The rest of season 6 is coming very, very soon. And by the time this video comes up, maybe it's already out. I suspect that season 6 will wrap up late October, early November, somewhere around there, which would probably mean that season 7 would start early 2017, and that would give them enough time to get through the entirety of season 7 right before the MLP movie starts up,
right,
which we think is going to be late 2017, but we're not sure yet.
Right. And that movie is going to be very critical to what direction are they going to take the show.
Yeah.
If that movie is largely, poorly written, a question of that first episode, the plot holes were many and all over the place. I think that you're going to be looking at more shows stagnation than moving towards, some destination. If, on the other hand, the show moves everything into a more dramatic area, like, say, Equestria Nights, where the main 6 and Twilight are all elevated to a new role in Equestria, that would be the place to do it, because you have essentially a 2-hour, here is the big thing that changes the show before and after. And I could see Hasbro being behind that, because after all, if you have, new, armored knight pony designs, those are figurines for, girls to, buy. And honestly, boys at that point. So the movie is going to, I think, be a real major turning point for the show, either towards, stagnation and how long can we milk this thing, a step back, do we depower Twilight and have some episodes where she's more in developing character-wise rather than, her role in Equestria, or do we, go towards a major epic upgrade in the show? So I don't know. I have
a lot of interesting questions, yeah. But then a whole lot of this conversation really has been speculation and what we hope to see, what we hope not to see. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what MLP is going to bring us in the near future. And I'm glad that we were having this chat where we can discuss these possibilities. Thank you for joining me here this day, Somber.
Oh, thank you for having me.
All right. And in the meantime, we would love to hear each of your thoughts in the comments below. If you have any of your own ideas on what Twilight Sparkle's eventual role is going to be, and Celestia and Luna and the rest of the main six as well. And as per usual, I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.